Hello, I am Sir Sugarmeat, and I am once again asking for your financial support. Wait, no. That can't be right. Sorry, what I really meant to say was, I recently watched a hit anime, Sousou no Frieren, or Frieren Beyond Journey's End, and I cannot recommend it enough. If you're unfamiliar with the series, Frieren Beyond Journey's End is a story about an elven mage named Frieren, who has lived for at least 1,000 years, likes collecting mundane spells and other magic treasure, and just so happened to defeat the Demon King alongside her friends Himmel, Heiter, and Eisen. Except the thing is, we don't actually get to see her defeat the Demon King. The series begins after this action-packed 10-year quest has ended, hence the name. And when Frieren and her friends return to the royal capital for the first time since their 10-year journey, the entire city celebrates this new era of peace with a festival, and our heroes spend a heartfelt evening watching a meteor shower and reminiscing about all the dangerous yet fun adventures they've experienced together. And then Frieren leaves to go dick around for the next 50 years before the next meteor shower. The thing about Frieren is that she is a nearly immortal elf, and the elven species in this series tend to not be very sentimental, as many even lack the drive to procreate and repopulate their endangered species. So because of that, Frieren really doesn't think much of those 10 years she had spent with her friends. That is, not until the next time she reunites with them 50 years later. And because Himmel and Heiter are humans, they are understandably aged during their next meeting. Eisen is also aged, but he's a dwarf, so he's still got some gas left in the tank. But anyway, during their reunion, they watch that same meteor shower from 50 years ago. And then Himmel, the hero, dies. And at first, Frieren doesn't have a visible reaction. I mean, she saw this coming, everyone did. But he had lived out a good long life, and death is, unfortunately, an unavoidable feature of life. But as other funeral attendees comment on Frieren's supposed lack of grief, as Frieren watches Himmel's coffin disappear beneath the dirt, as she remembers all the times they spent with each other, she begins to cry and expresses regret about not getting to know Himmel better. And that's when Frieren's worldview shifts, and she decides that she would like to make a larger effort to know humanity a bit better, as she retraces the journey she embarked on with her friends 80 years ago. And though she tries to go on this journey alone at first, she is eventually joined by Fern, a promising, reserved human mage who was raised by her friend Heiter, and Stark, a cowardly but strong human warrior who was raised by her friend Eisen. Frieren is classified as a shonen series, but it doesn't feel like most shonen. It's rather slow, and because the hero party had already defeated the looming threat that plagued the continent, it doesn't really feel like there's a pertinent conflict that needs to be overcome. But what takes the place of traditional Western storytelling is instead a non-linear story with trivial short-lived conflicts, with the main goal being Frieren's emotional development. The show itself is riddled with flashbacks, especially since Frieren revisits many of the places she had previously visited with her original hero party, but now gets to re-experience with Fern and Stark. And we get to watch as these places and experiences are recontextualized for Frieren, especially now that she holds a new worldview on life and her relationships. This series is definitely not for everyone. The characters all generally speak with a similar level-headed tone, and the action scenes are scarce due to Frieren being a rather overpowered mage for her current time period. But for its intended audience, there is a formidable magic in the subtlety of the show. Frieren, again because of her nearly infinite lifespan, doesn't really have a good sense of time. She could spend 10 years in a single small village, because 10 years is relative to a week to her. And on top of that, Frieren is just a general fan of leisure. She loves deviating from her main quest to learn about the specific fauna and flora that are unique to each region, search for ridiculous grimoires, and sleep in. She only forces herself to continue on her journey because Fern, being human with a very finite lifespan, gets annoyed and pushes Frieren to be more considerate of their time. And the series reflects Frieren's leisurely nature. Each episode reminds us how many years have passed since Himmel's passing, with years passing by each couple of episodes. And each episode often contains montages of the characters mundanely going about their day. And while silent montages would usually feel boring or insignificant, I find myself being drawn to them. Despite Frieren being this uniquely somber and slow anime, it's quite popular, claiming the #1 spot on my anime list currently. And I think it's these more subtle moments that people truly find comfort in. Studio Ghibli films are another sector of media that is both highly popular and specialized in this reflective quiet. Studio Ghibli co-founder and director Hayao Miyazaki calls these moments of quiet the ma, a Japanese concept in which the audience has time to reflect, imagine, and interpret what is happening. Miyazaki, during an interview with Roger Ebert, said that without the ma, you would just have constant tension at 80 degrees all the time, and you would just get numb. The ma throughout Studio Ghibli films is what makes them so uniquely cozy, and that's also the beauty about Frieren. It's during these moments of quiet where we see the growth in character relationships, where we think about what the characters just went through and how they must be feeling during this moment of reflection. And while there's quite a few interesting ideas that this show has to offer, I actually want to focus on a more simplistic one: the way the characters in this show subtly show their affection for one another. From here on out, I'm also going to be jumping around all of the episodes of Frieren that have been currently released, as well as talk about some minor manga spoilers. So if you would like to watch this series for yourself spoiler-free, I suggest you click off this video now and come back at a later time. Thank you. Like I mentioned before, at the beginning of the series when Frieren attends Himmel's funeral, she claims that she regrets not getting to know him better so that she may have loved him fully as a friend. And even during her journey with the hero party, she claims that she doesn't actually know anything about the companions she's chosen to travel with. But the thing is, Frieren often underestimates just how much she knows and loves her companions. Despite her thinking she doesn't know or care for her friends properly, Frieren consistently goes through the extra effort for them. For example, for 6 months, she searches for Himmel's favorite flower just so she can plant an entire field of them around one of his statues. She spends years with Heiter trying to decipher a grimoire that she is told can save him from death, even when they both know that such a spell is probably impossible. When she fights Aura, she takes care to dispel the magic that controls the corpses of the fallen soldiers, rather than blasting through them with flashier spells. Not only because Himmel wanted to respect the bodies of their fallen comrades, but because she now has realized that these fallen soldiers deserve more respect. And she does this while risking large amounts of mana, which were crucial to winning the fight against the Sage of Destruction. When we watch Frieren plan her first birthday celebration for Fern, we, alongside Fern, watch Frieren spend hours meticulously planning the perfect birthday for her student. Frieren ends up taking Fern to a nice restaurant where they can watch the sunset and enjoy some delicious sweets. And the Elven Mage presents her student with her very first birthday gift. Frieren, though, before giving Fern the gift, apologizes, claiming that she wasn't sure what Fern would like. But the gift that Frieren gives Fern is a butterfly hair clip, which is actually quite appropriate for Fern. Not only is it symbolic of Fern's character, a symbol of hope and metamorphosis as Fern holds the potential to be the next best human mage, but also because we eventually learn that one of the earliest spells that a young Fern produced for Heiter was a butterfly projection spell. And from then on, we see Fern wear that hair clip for the rest of the series. Also, as previously mentioned, Frieren loves to collect pointless spells, and each time someone asks her why, most of the time she just tells them that it's simply a hobby of hers. But as the series progresses, we learn that it's not actually just a hobby, but also a means to connect with her friends. She learns a rust cleaning spell so that she can clean the rust off of any neglected statues of her and her companions. She learns a spell that turns grapes sour because her friend Aizen prefers sour grapes. In fact, when she gets to reunite with him after Heiter's death, we see that he happily ate a full basket of sour grapes. She knows a powerful spell that can create a rock golem to fight for her in battle, but we also see her use that same spell to make a breakdancing rock golem to amuse her friends. She fights to obtain a spell that can produce shaved ice to share with her friends, and when they realize that there's no syrup to go with the shaved ice, she finds a syrup producing spell as well, so that way they can enjoy flavored shaved ice together. And lastly, her favorite spell is a flower bed making spell. Not only because it was her master's favorite spell, but also because it was the spell that showed a young, scared, and lost Himmel just how beautiful magic could really be. This spell would be so memorable to Himmel that it would inspire him to seek out that same elven mage about 10 years later to ask her to join his quest to defeat the Demon King. The same quest that would go on to change Frieren's life. What additionally makes the dynamic between Frieren and the hero party all the more heartwarming is that they seem to be the ones responsible for teaching Frieren all about hope and affection. Living in an elven village and studying under Flam's guidance seemed to have taught her plenty about magic, but all of the other little practices Frieren does to show affection to Fern, Stark, and even Sane were all learned from her original hero party members. Frieren often pats her companions' heads to comfort or show her appreciation for them, a habit she learned from Heiter. Frieren also picked up the tradition of making Hamburg steaks for Stark's birthday from Eisen, a tradition to thank warriors for their earnest hard work. While Frieren herself doesn't believe in the goddess of creation, she understands that the goddess is a symbol of hope for her friends, and chooses to pray for the dead and think of her deceased companions as happy in heaven for their sake. And she holds Fern's hand because it comforted her when Himmel held her hand whenever she was sick. All of the ways that Frieren knows how to show affection can be traced back to her original hero party companions. And I think it speaks to how much she loves and respects them to carry on their mannerisms with this new generation of companions. It's funny because in episode 27 of the anime series, we finally get this flashback between a young Fern and Heiter, where Heiter explains to Fern that Frieren has trouble understanding emotions, but also that she is aware of this and will try her best to make up for that weakness. And it's a beautiful confirmation to receive after watching 26 episodes of Frieren putting out this tremendous effort for her friends under the guise of it being for her own selfish reasons. And it's equally amazing that Heiter knows this about Frieren. Which leads me to the next thing I want to talk about, the way Frieren's companions show care and affection for her. I think what really warms my heart whenever I watch Frieren interact with her friends is just how patient and understanding everyone is with her. Frieren's cool and reserved nature can be hard for the audience to read at first, especially since she doesn't talk about herself often and likes to mask her feelings. I'm not sure how much Frieren even understands about Frieren, to be honest. But it's amazing to see that her companions knew her so well that they were able to anticipate so much about her. From what she would order at a restaurant to what she would probably want or need in the future. Eisen and Heiter knew that Frieren had regrets about her relationship with Himmel, and together they conducted extensive research and crafted a plan that would lead her to discover Flam's notes on Ariel, where Frieren would be able to reunite with Himmel's ghost and tell him all the things she had held back on saying to him. And when Eisen first explains this to Frieren, she objects to it, saying that the time for that had passed. But Eisen rightfully ignores this comment, not only because she had already outwardly expressed her regret at Himmel's funeral, but also because Eisen and Heiter knew of the love Frieren was unable to express during her time with Himmel. They seem to have spent so much time together on their own, after all. And as we've addressed before, despite Frieren vocalizing a colder perception of her relationships, we've seen through her actions that her words do not reflect the reality of their warmth. Additionally, I feel like this is part of the reason why Heiter and Eisen are quick to come to her defense when some of the attendees criticize Frieren's lack of expression at Himmel's funeral. Not only out of love for their friend, but also because they know that the accusation of her being heartless and not feeling any remorse just simply isn't true. And just as how Eisen and Heiter are aware of Frieren's love for Himmel, they are aware of her own love for them. When Frieren first embarks on her new journey after Himmel's passing, she tries to get Eisen to travel with her, to which he replies that he's too old for adventures. This causes the slightest shift in her expression, and while it doesn't seem like much to us as viewers, Eisen is able to recognize what this expression means and reassures her that his time for adventure has simply come to pass. Similarly, when Heiter finally falls from old age and becomes bedridden, he is also able to register Frieren's reaction as mournful, and reassures her that while this is a sad sign that his age is catching up to him, it's fine because he has lived a full life. And because they know Frieren so well, it makes it all the easier for Heiter and Eisen to convince her to embark on her journey, to reunite with Himmel, and to take on Fern as an apprentice. At first, Frieren herself doesn't feel much obligation to seek out new companionship or even find closure with old companionship. But Heiter actually tricks Frieren into taking on Fern as an apprentice by making her think that she's mainly there to transcribe a grimoire for him, when in reality, she's also spending that time to bond with and shape Fern into a mage skilled enough to embark on a dangerous journey with Frieren. And Eisen convinces Frieren to seek out Ariel simply by saying that it would be a favor for him. because he knows that at this stage in her life, Frieren just wants to do all she can for her aging friends. And I'd also like to add, by Heiter and Aizen doing so, isn't it also incredibly Himmel-like to do all this to change Frieren's life for the better?
ほんの少しでいい。誰かの人生を変えてあげればいい。きっとそれだけで十分なんだ。僕のイケメンぶりを残して。
Yeah, speaking of Himmel. Himmel is an amazing character. He was not the chosen hero as many thought he was, but rather a self-made hero who resolutely believed in a better future. And he undoubtedly loved and was in love with Frieren. We see plenty of flashbacks of Himmel wanting to teach Frieren more about himself and pulling her in when she tries to remain aloof. He commissioned a multitude of statues of himself and the rest of the hero party, not only because he wanted them to be remembered throughout history, but also because he anticipated Frieren's desire to be reminded of their memory. Of his memory. And he also wasn't afraid to push Frieren to be a better person, whether it was pushing her to embark on their 10-year journey, or to consider giving a demon child a second chance, or teaching her to be more respectful of the subjugated corpses that made up Aura's army. Just as Aizen and Heiter saw her for who she truly was, Himmel also knew that Frieren is a compassionate person deep down, and that this 10-year journey would be an incredibly sentimental journey for Frieren because of the time spent with her friends. And I feel like the moment that truly illustrates how well Himmel knew Frieren is when he reprimands her for not joining them to watch the sunrise at the New Year's festival. Frieren doesn't go to this festival because waking up early is difficult for her, and she also felt as though she wouldn't have found it special anyway. Yet, Himmel insists that she would have enjoyed it. And she doesn't understand how Himmel could think this until she experiences the sunrise with Fern. And while at first she doesn't find the sunrise to be anything special in itself, when she sees that Fern is enjoying herself, Frieren begins to feel happiness as well. And I think that's the most beautiful aspect of these characters' affection for one another. The affection that they give to one another is always accompanied with an understanding and love for who that person truly is. Himmel knew that Frieren would enjoy the sunrise because he knew that she is the type of person who would find joy in her companion's joy. Fern enjoys dungeon diving and treasure hunting with Frieren because she knows that Frieren experiences so much happiness in finding magical items. Stark feeds Fern a multitude of skewers when she's upset with Frieren because he knows that snacks are the sure way to cheer her up. Aizen, who is scared of his first battle with a dragon, finds comfort and ease once Himmel admits that he too is scared. And Himmel finds so much joy in the fact that when he offers to buy an accessory for Frieren, she thoughtlessly chooses a lotus flower ring, a symbol of eternal love. Not only because he himself loves Frieren, but also because isn't it such a Frieren thing to do to choose something that means so much without giving it too much thought? And that's why in chapter 117 of the manga, it's all the more heartbreaking when Grissom casts the Paradise Guidance spell on Himmel and Frieren. This spell allows the afflicted to enter an illusion where they live out a dream that they had already abandoned, accepting that it would never come true. And that dream for Himmel is marrying Frieren. Himmel has accepted that his dream of marrying Frieren would never come true. And here he is, granted the chance to play this fantasy out for a brief moment, and yet he doesn't let this illusion cloud his judgment, even when Frieren herself is ready to let it play out. He tells Frieren that they are currently under a spell, and with a small amount of Frieren's guidance, Himmel is able to fight Grissom by relying on his other senses. And what's so heartbreaking about this chapter is that it puts everything else into a different context. You see, the Frieren we see in chapter 117 is actually present-day Frieren who had accidentally stumbled back into the past when she touched a pillar of the goddess. And she lets the hero party know that she is not their Frieren. She is a Frieren from the future. And past Frieren never has any recollection of the fight with Grissom, but Himmel does. Himmel has to continue on knowing that a future Frieren was ready to kiss him during this wedding illusion, while his Frieren does not possess those same feelings. Yet, Himmel never shows any regret or frustration. He merely thanks Frieren for allowing him to see such a euphoric dream and lets her return back to her time. And he never brings it up with his Frieren either. He merely continues to treat her with the same love and patience as he always has, until his death. Loving someone who doesn't quite know what love is, or has a different way of showing affection, can be difficult, but if you truly love them, it is a hurdle that can easily be overcome with patience, communication, and understanding. And I genuinely love all the different ways that Sousou no Frieren demonstrates this concept. I've seen a lot of people describe this series as cozy, and I believe that it's because the characters' relationships with one another are quite cozy in themselves. I can't help but smile whenever I see Heiter and Aizen playing in the flower field, or Fern getting overly protective of Frieren. And there's not really a groundbreaking lesson here or anything, I just really appreciated these little moments that were sprinkled throughout the show. And I think it's the show's goal as well to remind you to appreciate those small pockets of warmth sprinkled throughout your life, in whichever way that is true to you. If you've made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching. Have you watched Frieren Beyond Journey's End? What do you like about the show? Or if you haven't watched it yet, would you watch it based on what I've said here in this video? Let me know in the comments below. It's a beautiful day out where I'm at, so I think it is time for me to go outside and touch some grass. Majima and Jellybean and I will catch you in the next video. Bye-bye.